So let's just jump right in. We all know one of the planet's most incredible natural wonders is, well, it's dying. And to try and save it, scientists are turning to an idea that sounds like it's been ripped straight from the pages of a science fiction novel. Literally engineering the clouds.
I mean, just look at it. This is the Great Barrier Reef. It's supposed to be this vibrant, sprawling city of life under the sea. But we've all seen the pictures. It's bleaching. And that's a direct result of our oceans getting warmer and warmer. The situation has gotten so bad that our usual conservation efforts, they just might not be enough anymore. And that leads to this really wild question. What if the best way to save the reef isn't to work in the water at all, but to intervene in the very clouds that are floating right above it? Okay, so how would that even begin to work? To really get it, we need to dive into the science behind this pretty radical and very controversial idea, a field that's known as geoengineering. Now, geoengineering, at its core, is the deliberate, large-scale manipulation of Earth's systems to fight climate change. It's this huge umbrella term, but you can basically split it into two main paths. You've got carbon dioxide removal, which is kind of like trying to clean up the mess we've already made, and then there's solar radiation management, which is more like trying to put up a giant planetary sunshade. And for this, we're going to focus on one very specific type of that sunshade approach, Marine Cloud Brightening, or MCB for short. The goal here is pretty straightforward, at least in theory. Make the clouds that form over the ocean brighter, so they bounce more sunlight back into space. The result? A kind of cooling shade for the water down below. So how in the world do you make a cloud brighter? Well, it's this fascinating four-step process. First up, you have these specialized turbines. Picture them on the back of a ship, and they spray trillions of tiny microscopic sea salt particles up into the air. Then these little salt particles act like seeds, right? They help the water vapor in the air form way more droplets, but, and this is the key, much smaller ones. And here's the magic part, step 3. A cloud that's jam-packed with more smaller droplets is actually whiter and reflects more light. And finally, that brighter cloud acts like a giant natural sunshade, cooling the surface of the sea right underneath. But, the science is really only half the story here. This technology is not a simple fix. It's basically walking a tightrope between what some people would call playing God and what others see as just buying some desperately needed time. And this quote just perfectly captures the opposition. Sylvia Ribeiro from the ETC Group puts it bluntly. She says geoengineers are flying in the face of global moratoria and that these projects pose a clear and present danger to our oceans. So you can see, this isn't just some academic debate. It's a huge fight over who gets to experiment with our one and only planet. And this opposition has had very real consequences. All the way back in 2010, the UN basically put the brakes on geoengineering with a de facto moratorium. Other treaties have banned specific types, like fertilizing the ocean. The big argument from critics is that this is all a dangerous techno-fix, a shiny distraction that gives the fossil fuel industry a pass to avoid the real solution, which is, of course, cutting emissions. And believe me, these aren't just empty threats. Major projects have been stopped dead in their tracks. In the UK, there was the SPICE experiment. The plan was to spray particles from a giant balloon, but he got canceled after a massive outcry from the public and other scientists about the risks and the total lack of oversight. And then it happened again with Harvard's big project, ScopeX. They tried to move their experiment from the US to Sweden, but it was shut down after powerful, organized opposition from indigenous groups, specifically the Sami Council, who raised some really serious ethical questions about running experiments in what they consider to be their sacred skies. Which brings us to the absolute core mystery of all this. You've got a global moratorium, you've got this history of high-profile projects getting shut down by public and indigenous opposition. So why on earth was a marine cloud brightening experiment at the Great Barrier Reef allowed to go ahead in 2020? How did that happen? Well, the answer really lies in what made the Australian project so different from all the others. Let's unpack how this one project managed to succeed where everyone else had pretty spectacularly failed. And this slide really tells the whole story. It's a tale of two completely different approaches. On one hand, you have the canceled projects. They were framed as these grand global climate solutions run top-down by scientists, and they just slammed into a brick wall of indigenous opposition. But the Great Barrier Reef project? They played it completely differently. It wasn't about saving the planet, it was about saving the reef. It was framed as a local conservation effort to just buy time. And most importantly, they built a real partnership with the traditional owners right from the very beginning. And this is the incredible result of that approach. Goodju 4-Mile, a traditional owner, said, "It's a good opportunity. It gives them the chance to be part of the solution." You see, by respecting their role as the rightful custodians of their sea country, the project went from being seen as an invasion to being seen as a partnership.
What the Australian project earned is something called a social license to operate. Now, that's not a legal permit you can hold in your hand. It's something way more important. It's the genuine approval and acceptance from the local community and stakeholders. They didn't just ask for permission at the end. They built trust and a sense of shared ownership from the start.
And this chart just shows how unbelievably powerful that framing was. When they analyzed media coverage of the project, the phrase "saving the Great Barrier Reef" was mentioned 90 times. It totally dominated the conversation. Mentions of risks or controversy, way, way behind. The story the public heard wasn't risky global experiment, it was urgent local rescue mission.
But okay, even with this one success, we have to be super clear here. The future of this technology is anything but certain. We might have cracked open the door, but we have no idea if there's a silver bullet waiting on the other side, or a Pandora's box.
And here's the crucial thing to remember. The 2020 Australian trial wasn't some full-blown cloud brightening success story. It was a tiny, small-scale test of the equipment. All it really confirmed was that their fancy new nozzle could spray the right size of sea salt particles from a boat. A full-scale deployment that could actually cool the reef, that's still years, if not decades away.
And the risks that come with this stuff, they are enormous. And it's not just marine cloud brightening, which, by the way, could mess with rainfall patterns around the world and does absolutely nothing to stop the ocean from becoming more acidic. Just look at some of the other ideas being floated. Spreading glass microbubbles on Arctic ice could poison the food chain. Trying to fertilize the ocean could create vast oxygen-starved dead zones. These are not small side effects we're talking about.
This leaves us staring at a minefield of massive unanswered questions. I mean, could cooling the reef off Australia cause a devastating drought somewhere else? What are the long-term effects on marine life that we can't even begin to predict? How do you possibly govern a technology that literally blows across international borders? And maybe the most terrifying question of all, if we start doing this, what happens if we ever have to stop? The rebound warming could be faster and way more destructive than anything we're facing right now.
Which brings us to the final critical question that you should walk away with. Is something like marine cloud brightening a necessary last-ditch effort to save a priceless ecosystem that is right on the brink of collapsing forever? Or is it a dangerously tempting distraction that lets us avoid the one single solution that we know for a fact will work, a massive, immediate, global cut in fossil fuel emissions?